From beyond the farthest reaches of our galaxy they come. Two brains pulsing with a strange energy. These space brains come to share their love of science fiction movies.
Hi, and welcome to Space Brains, the show where we joy watch sci-fi movies and then talk to the directors. I'm Surrey, and this is Mark.
Hiya. Now it's episode 86, and tonight we are not reviewing a film, we are talking film with West Australian award-winning writer-director benyoung.
Benyoung. So this is your spoiler warning. If you haven't listened to No,
if you haven't seen benyoung's Extinction.
Oh, no, actually, we do have a spoilers of Extinction in here.
And we do probably talk about a couple other kind of general spoilers as well. But anyway, so this is your warning.
Warning. Go back and watch Extinction. Listen to our episode on Extinction.
Definitely.
And if you were at our film festival, just remember the film festival. But we're talking.
Ben spoke at for a
Ben
little while.
spoke there, and he's speaking to us tonight.
So Ben is a award-winning writer-director who did begin his career acting for the screen at the age of 12. He headed off to university here in WA, studying a Bachelor of Arts in 2003 and completing a Master of Screen Studies at the West Australian Screen Academy in 2005. Since then, he's gone on to direct things like music videos, commercial, fashion film, and written or directed series TV.
His 2016 feature debut, Hounds of Love, was funded through Screen West's West Coast Visions, produced by Factor 30 Films, starring Emma Booth, Ashley Cummins and Stephen Curry. It had its world premiere at the 2016 Venice Film Festival, picking up a prize for Best Actress in a Debut Film, and received 9 2016 Actor Award nominations, including Best Film, Best Direction and Best Actress for Emma Booth's performance.
Ben's second film, Extinction, is available and premiered on Netflix. It's how we saw it and how we reviewed it and came out in 2018. It stars Michael Penner and Lizzie Kaplan and Emma Booth again, and was produced by David Hoberman and Todd Lieberman for Good Universe.
For television, Ben's directing credits include a block on Netflix's first Australian-produced production, Clickbait, for Tony Ayres Productions, and the upcoming The Wilds 2 for Amazon from creator Sarah Stryker.
Ben is currently in post-production on his next feature, Where All the Lights Tend to Go, starring Billy Bob Thornton, Robin Wright, produced by Griff First, Josh Kelselman and Robin Wright for Curmudgeon Films.
Ben is based in Western Australia, the best part of Australia.
Definitely the best part.
Unless you're in Eastern Australia, in which case maybe that's okay too.
Welcome to the show, benyoung, and we are going to talk about your process as a filmmaker. We're going to talk about Extinction, and we're going to talk a little bit about science fiction films. So let's welcome benyoung to the show.
Yeah, g'day, Ben.
Well, thank you so much for having me, guys.
Thanks, Ben. Thanks for joining us. We did this last time. We interviewed Luke Spark on a previous episode and Hamid Al-Saref, and they're both made sci-fi feature films which are available on Netflix as well, like Extinction is available on Netflix. And we just like to start by just saying that we at Space Brains like to talk about the good and the great of the films we look at. So I just wanted to kind of let you know a couple of the things I liked about Extinction. So
thank you.
One of the things I really liked was the actual concept. So the idea of AI has overtaken planet Earth, and that they've kind of basically kicked us silly humans off the planet. What about you, Surrey? What was one thing you liked?
I mean, obviously I really like that concept because it's fantastic. But I was just talking earlier with Mark here that one of the things I quite liked was at the beginning, the way that the party gets interrupted by the attack And there's, lots of people get shot up and killed, but we have these two families. We have Peter and Alice and their buddies next door who are sort of hanging around and they work together a little bit and then they get separated. Yeah, so you think, okay, well, that's got rid of them. But then they come back together again on the roof before finally that other family gets killed. And the reason I like this is I don't like people being killed so much, but it's more the case that as a way of saying, hey, things are dangerous and we're going to be in a very dangerous world now. We can't really threaten the main characters because it's not an R-rated film. We know that we're not going to have, children being blown up in front of us. So it's,
we did have one child get blown up.
Yeah, there was. Yeah, okay. Well, okay. But we're not going to get the main children get blown up. And
exactly.
What we could do, and what was done quite well, I think, was by having that second family first separated, you think, oh, okay, well, that's them. Now we're going to follow this, Peter and his family. Yep. But by bringing them back in, it gives that illusion of, this is going to be a team, that they're going to work together a bit and they'll have some hardships. But no, then we kill them. And suddenly you're thinking, oh, okay, it was a way of introducing danger and threat without having to do that sort of rather, I suppose, a false threatening of the family where you kind of know they're not really going to get hurt. Like, if they're going to get hurt, it's going to be more like his wife does, where she gets a bit injured and that becomes a plot point as opposed to increasing the stakes in that sort of way. I really liked that part of it.
Thank you.
What was it that attracted you to the original story concept, Ben?
Yeah, I think a little bit like you guys. When I read it, I was a little bit take or leave it right up until the twist where we learned that, oh, hang on a minute, these guys aren't human. These are AIs. And then that kind of really opened up a whole world of opportunity for me. And it was really that got me into it. And I also liked the notions of the fear that we have of the different. And at the time that we made the film, there was a lot of politics going on about the Middle East and all of this sort of stuff. And particularly in the US, there was a lot of fear of anybody who was different. And I thought that we had an opportunity to play a little bit with that metaphor in the movie, which was really good. But interestingly enough, one of the things that might interest you about the script is the script wasn't set in the future.
Right.
Like when I read it, it just read like, an average family in the here and now, didn't specify anything to do with the design or anything to do with the costumes or anything like that. And then that kind of threw me for a six a little bit, because then I thought, this doesn't work if it's just set now, because I don't believe that AI would be wearing T-shirts that have bands on it, or, they wouldn't be looking like us. And if we had the kind of technology where we could have AIs in every household, well, surely we've got to be in the future. And so that was one of the things that I enjoyed, was thinking of the possibilities of, well, how's this going to look? Because it's not even set in the future. Like when you read the script, it just reads like it's set in the here and now. And so coming up with that and like the little details, unfortunately, a lot of them didn't make it to screen. But I love the fact that when I introduced us into the house, Peter and Alice's house for the first time, I filmed all of these shots of like coffee cups and cooking pans and all of that filled with plants.
Yep.
Like the AI have found a use for all of these objects which are in the home that they took over. And I think that, had I got that onto the film, everyone would have thought, Alice is a bit quirky and into her plants and all of that. But then, of course, when we learned the twist, we would have learned that all of that would have made sense. And I think there's only two details like that actually made it into the film. And one of them is at the party, if you look at it, nobody's got a drink and nobody's eating. And so that's one little hint that they're AIs. And the other thing, unfortunately, it got made a little more subtle than I wanted it, but one of the kids gets hideously injured in the flashback and loses an eye.
Right.
And I used visual effects, and throughout the whole movie, she's actually got two different coloured eyes because one of them was fake. And so that was the reveal, another little weird thing that I wanted up front. We go, why has that kid got two different coloured eyes? And then we learn later that like, oh man, it's because in the uprising, she lost an eye and she had a fake one put in, much like that was my little nod to C-3PO having the silver leg, But unfortunately, that got pulled back a lot more than I would have liked it to. So it's so subtle at the moment that I don't think a lot of people notice. But yeah, there are some things that attracted me to it. So I think in short, the things that attracted me to it most were, the concept and the twist, AI taking over the world, and then the twist that our heroes are not actually humans. They're some would call the villains. And then secondly was the opportunity that I had to world build and talk about some of the political stuff that was going on in the world, metaphorically.
Yeah, well, you have the human soldier. It seemed very evident that, when he does confront Peter, in the underground bit, and he says, it wasn't even me that was fighting the AI. It was my granddad or grandfather or whatever. And it's like he's been sold that concept that we are sold with war or whatever, that propaganda idea of attack these other people. I'm glad you brought that bit up, because that's another bit that I like, and that wasn't in the script when I got involved, and I fought for that, because I was like, well, hold on a minute, it's like these guys who are coming down now, it would be years and years before, and I love the idea that we get to talk about brainwashing and how hate is something which is bred into us. It's very rarely a choice that we get to make on our own. And that's another thing that I really liked about it. Yeah, and you saw him when he comes to the daughter under the kitchen table, doesn't he? He kind of was like, oh, there's a little girl here, and then later, as I said, he's saying, well, yeah, we were told a different story, and I mean, I felt, and Surrey actually picked up on. I'm glad you're saying about the pot plants, because Surrey picked up on that, and it was something that I felt. We talked about it when we reviewed Extinction a couple of episodes back, and I also felt like the girl in the elevator at the start, She's like almost robotic. Dad hops in, wants to talk to her, and she goes, no talking on the elevator like a robot does, in a self-talking elevator that we might have today, in today's technology. So it did seem like there was some subtleties, and the party we picked up at the party that no one was drinking, and so it did seem that way. But and Surrey definitely picked on the pot plants. And,
well, it was the no breakfast.
Yeah, the no breakfast.
So he comes down from his dream, and the cliched, or the trope that we're used to, is the grab coffee in one hand, wife puts toast in the mouth, got a briefcase, don't have time, got to move out. There's a whole table full of food that nobody eats, but there you go. But instead, he comes down and she's just folding laundry, and his daughter's under the table playing with that little monkey that says monkey see, monkey do.
It was so difficult to figure out how to film this movie, because one of the things as a filmmaker, you want to always give actors something to do. Often you do, particularly if they're just talky exposition scenes, and it's like, well, what are they going to do? Well, if they're wearing clothes, they don't sweat, but they still get external stuff on them. They could still potentially get dust on them and all of that kind of business. So laundry is something that these things would do. Yes, they'd still interact with other technology that could break, and so fixing stuff is something that they could do. But these were all a lot of challenges that I got faced with when making it. There was a whole world that I had to come up with that isn't necessarily even explored on the screen. It's about what we didn't show as much as about what we did.
Did you have much of a say then on the set and the sort of the costume and that style that the characters were wearing?
Yeah, I had kind of all the say in that, which was good. It was one of the areas where I was sort of left alone a little bit. Not quite as much as I wanted, but I was like, okay, well, it can't look like now, because then it's just not going to be believable when we hear the twist and all of that. So it's got to be different. And I thought, well, they're robots, and so I don't think sex is what drives so much of everything it means to be human. I mean, part of the reason why most people get their hair cut is because they want to appear physically. If humans didn't care how they were perceived by other humans, I think we all agree that fashion would be completely different. Advertising would be completely different. Advertising probably almost wouldn't exist. And all of these things. And so it was like I wanted to design a world that just looked functional.
Yeah,
so that was why, the color palette, every time I make a movie, the first thing I do is I try and break the movie up into, different worlds. And so I wanted this world to be very grey and very bleak and very blue, and, no reds, no anything like this, and just, reserve, hold stuff back just to make it feel a little cold and a little robotic.
Well, we noticed this sort of felt a bit like an Apple shop. You go into an Apple store and it's all those sort of smooth contours, but it's all clean lines with matte muted colours with metallics and silvers and so on. And it looked like the factory he worked in, because he kept referring to it as a factory. Didn't say what was built there.
Yep.
You know, ironically, the AI were building children, but
Exactly.
The factory itself wasn't grubby and dirty. He was in some sort of octagonal white cylindrical room thing, plugging in a very Tesla-looking sort of.
Can you guess what that really was? Like we didn't build that. That actually exists in Belgrade, Serbia, where we shot it. Can you guess what it is?
Ooh, I don't know, like an air tunnel tester or something.
Oh, you got it. It's a wind tunnel designed to test wind resistance on missiles.
Oh, cool. Yeah, right. Wow.
Yep.
That is interesting. Well, and did you find that, or did you set your production designer?
Yeah, our wonderful locations team found that. We actually shot. The factory is actually a top secret military base that for somehow we were allowed access onto under armed guard.
Yeah.
So we couldn't go into the wrong places. But that's a top secret military base that we were actually allowed to film on.
Wow, that's cool, eh?
It reminds me of when we were talking with Hamid.
Hamid Al-Sarif.
Yeah, Hamid Al-Sarif. We're talking to him, and he had this amazing house at the start of his feature film called In Paradox, where it sort of starts off. It almost looks a bit sort of futuristic. It's sort of layered hexagons at different levels.
Beautiful house.
It's beautiful, like sort of futuristic looking thing. And that was the Shah of Iran's holiday home or something rather stupid.
Yeah.
Wow.
One of his
actual real thing.
Yeah, his assistant or something or other knew the cousin of the Shah.
They just got
and
permission to shoot
there. They said, yeah, you can go shoot there. And he's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, fantastic.
That's actually reminded me of something else interesting that had to do with the look of the movie. And when I first got involved, we were trying to shoot the movie in Sydney. Which I would have loved, but it just ended up being too expensive. And so we decided to shoot it in Belgrade, Serbia. And then we got there and we still ran out of money. And so what was supposed to be an 80% studio shoot and 20% location ended up becoming 20% studio shoot and 80% location. And, of course, Serbia has still got so much brutalist architecture around that we had to kind of design everything to make it look like that was on purpose, you know, and I think it kind of worked in our favour in the end.
Yeah, it did. I think it looks, as Surrey was saying before, like that Apple shop kind of futuristic. Yeah, if the AIs took over, everything's slick and clean, and then the way you've shot functional. That as well. Yeah, the way that then it's come across on the camera, it's extremely kind of clinical, and those colours you're talking about as well do make it very much, you know, down and depressing, clean, green world that AIs would operate, as you said, without that void of the human touch, the human desire. Yep. So you've read the script, you're interested in getting involved. What straight away as a filmmaker, how do you kind of then think, okay, I'm going to make this. What's my intention to make this? Like, what did you want the audience to get out of it at the end of the film?
I wanted them to think, to, question their own belief system in, why they might feel a particular emotion towards others, particularly negative emotions. I wanted them to kind of see the humanity in people who didn't necessarily come from the same background as them. And so that was, I'm not really interested in making any movie that I can't, I can't make some kind of comment with. Yeah. And so that was really the big opportunity that I saw, because it's not often, well, certainly, I mean, it is often. So many of these kind of movies, the bigger Hollywood popcorn movies, they're just kind of vacant, or they have a statement or a theme which is sort of tacked on at the end, and it feels sort of preachy and not very interesting. And I just feel like I would like my movies to make people argue about something. I'm less interested in making a statement, but more about raising a question that hopefully, if a group of friends go and watch it together, they can go and have a coffee or a beer or whatever it is afterwards and argue about it, say, well, no, I took this from it. Well, no, I took this from it. And I'm not particularly smart. I'm certainly not smarter than your average person. And so I don't feel like I ever want to preach about anything in any of the movies that I make, because I'm not I don't know the answers to anything, but there's certain things that I think us as humanity don't handle very well that I wish I knew the solutions for, but I don't. And so at least hopefully I can get people to talk about some of them.
Do you feel that there's anything that you personally noticed, but and I mean, even going back to your short films or your scripts that you've written, like have you noticed a common theme that you maybe come back to at all?
And strangely, it's even in Extinction to a degree, but I often come back to parent-child relationships.
Yeah.
Like kind of Hounds of Love is certainly about that. The one that I just did is literally about a father and son, and Extinction less so, but obviously the family unit is a part of it. But yeah, I'm very interested in the dynamics between, you know, people who are in a relationship, like partners, and I'm also really interested in family relationships and the complexities that come with that.
Well, I mean, in a way, really, I suppose Extinction has that humans having created their AIs as sort of a generation there and a conflict between these generations. You'd almost say that's sort of a bit of a familial relationship, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
It had that feeling when Miles was talking to them, talking about his grandparents were the ones who had the fight with the AI, which it's sort of it brings a couple generations across there. But an interesting point that we noticed in a number of films that we have reviewed is the idea of director's cuts. Yeah, so Ridley Scott has been fortunate to have about 7 versions of Blade Runner come out. And there's a James Cameron, of course, has managed to get these Aliens director's cut out. And then there was the Alien 3-headed director's cut, which is very good. And there's any number of other director's cuts around.
Donnie
Darko.
Yeah.
And what if Netflix came and said, you know, here's some undisclosed large sum of money, please, you know, please would you do a director's cut? Would you go through your existing stuff? Would you reshoot anything? How would you go?
With that movie, I don't think we reshot anything. Like it was pretty good in that regard that we didn't botch anything up so much that we had to go and reshoot it. But I have a completely different structure. I would have put the movie together very differently if the buck stopped with me, and I'd love that opportunity to do that. You know, that's the thing. You know, and I don't want to sound like I'm being negative about it, because the reality is that as a filmmaker who is working for, you know, unless I'm putting up my own money to make my movies. The reality is I'm working for people who've put in millions and millions of dollars, and they've done whatever amounts of research and market research and stuff that just doesn't interest me. And for whatever reason, often what their research is saying or what their opinions are completely clash with mine creatively. And while I disagree, and that can be heartbreaking because I don't often feel like the solutions that they come up with are better than what I wanted to do, but you have to accept that that's a part of the job.
Do you think there should be more director's cuts? Do you think there's validity in them?
Yes.
Or do you,
Yeah, absolutely. But at the end of the day, I think that everything comes down to the dollar, and I think Extinction wasn't a big enough movie that it would warrant a director's cut. You know, I would say, and I'm thrilled that I still get hit up from people on Instagram or whatever from all over the world who've just watched the movie, and it divided audience. A lot of people hate it, but a lot of people absolutely love it as well. And unfortunately, the amount of people who absolutely love it, I don't think is big enough to warrant. They're the ones who'd watch a director's cut, and I don't think it warrants the cost to make a director's cut just for that number of people, if that makes sense.
The logistics of filmmaking for sure. And well, you spoke, you got to speak at our festival and you spoke about it, and I think Angela, the MC, suggested everyone should go away and watch it. So hopefully you're getting some more feedback, because definitely a few people I know since the festival have gone and watched Extinction. So and they're passing on some very positive feedback and parts they liked, etc. Did you have a favourite part of the film?
Like a part of the movie or making the movie?
No, well, it could be either, but let's start with a part of the actual film.
Yeah. I mean, I think that there's a few sequences in it that I'm really proud of. And one of them is when Peter goes off looking for the kids and he goes into Ray's apartment and the dropship comes down and it shoots the house up and he has to run through and he ends up in the hallway. I really like that sequence. But I also think the bit that I'm most proud of, I think that the best storytelling is just before they operate on Alice. And then when Alice has the flashbacks as well and wakes up and finally realizes that, Peter isn't crazy. She knows who she is. I like that sort of block of 10 minutes. I'm pretty proud of, and I think Lizzie Kaplan is fantastic, and all three of those actors are just so good in that moment. I think Israel Bouchard and of course the lovely Michael Pena, and so
excellent.
So that bit I really like that bit, and also and this is a nerdy filmmaker thing to say, but before I made this movie, the only special effects shot I'd ever done was a shot of a rabbit against a green screen for a short film. And so I was also pretty happy with how some of the action sequences turned out, given I'd never filmed any action before ever. And so, I like all the action in the end. I think all that's pretty cool. And yeah,
it's a great cat and mouse chase sequence, and like Surrey saying, wiping out the other family. That was a good sort of raising the stakes. There's also when they're on top of the building and they look over and there's other people on another building. That's a really great little narrative.
I laughed quite hard when that happened.
Yeah, because it's kind of like it's saying to them, no, we can maybe wave for help. No, you can't. Look what happens to these other people.
Look, a fun fact: the person at the front of that crowd is me.
Well, there you go. You're doing the Hitchcock. You're getting yourself in there and getting wiped out.
That's my cameo. And I made sure that my cameo was so small that no one could see my face. But that's me, and that's my voice screaming out help in the background as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, what was the process like? You come from Hounds of Love, which is a personal story that you've written. You've gotten local West Australian funding. You've made it. It's gone out to market, so to speak, and it's been quite critically successful here in Australia. And then you're offered Extinction, which is like a much bigger script. And I'm presuming when that's given to you, you kind of suggested that it's a bigger budget. What was that like for you as a filmmaker?
Oh, look, it was surreal. I was kind of caught up in a wave that I didn't really know how to navigate, because I was fortunate enough to get West Coast Visions and make Hounds of Love under West Coast Visions. And but traditionally, West Coast Visions movies, they all help the director, but the directors don't necessarily run off to Hollywood. They might be able to, start getting offered some adult television or some stuff like this, which they can use to pay the ways while they're trying to make the next independent film. But and I try and humbly say this: I'm not sure that any other West Coast Vision movie was swept up internationally like Hounds of Love was. It won an award at the Venice Film Festival and all of this. So literally, my life changed overnight, and I was getting all kinds of phone calls from all kinds of fancy people all over the world wanting to fly me everywhere for free and put me up and meet me. And I got sent Hounds of Love. I got told it was an urgent read from my agents, because it was I got a real offer, like we're going to pay you this much if you want to make this movie. And James McAvoy is semi-interested in it. You need to say yes, because they want to put you on a flight to London in 2 days to go and have dinner with James. To talk about the possibility of doing the movie. And 2 weeks ago, I premiered my very low-budget movie in Venice, and now I'm getting offered to be flown around the world to go and have dinner with movie stars and to talk about, big-budget movies, much bigger budget movies. And so my agents very much wanted me to do it, just because it was such a leg up. Very few people get to shoot a movie the size of Extinction before their first movie is even out. So it was a trajectory that is almost unheard of. And I didn't really know how to navigate it very well, and kind of, got swept away. And I learned a lot in the process.
Speaking of coming from, you said that people often move on to TV shows here. I imagine Water Rats and, Back to the Rafters and so forth. You've done a few TV sort of shows, The Wilds and Clickbait, which I think the one's on the Stan, one's on Netflix. And
Clickbait is Netflix, and Stan and Wilds is Amazon.
Oh, Amazon, sorry. Okay, so how does that compare to either of the films or any of the three films really that you've worked on or are working on?
The material is very, very different, but television is sort of a director's gift, because the director is really not got anywhere near the responsibility that they have in a movie. Like, if television isn't received well, the director always gets away with it. They're never blamed. It's always the showrunner and the writers and the producers, because television is a writer's medium and film is a director's medium. So television is a gift from my point of view, because by the time I get the call, the show is usually in pre-production, so it's all financed. It's often cast. Half the locations are found, and you just get to say yes or no, and the commitment is minuscule compared to what the commitment is in making a movie. So it's a gift in that sense. What was the question again?
I was just wondering how making those making the TV shows is different to making those films.
Yeah, so that's right. And so the director is not the boss. So you inherit the cast, you inherit a lot of the locations, you are in charge of creatively realizing the script, but you don't have the power just to rewrite it. If you don't like something, you're very much there to serve the writers and the producers and the showrunner. And so you have a lot less power, but with a lot less power, you have a lot less responsibility. So I find it a lot easier. In a way, it's always a lot faster, but there's something nice about just knowing that, like, well, it's not all on my shoulders here, so that's the main difference. And of course, the other main difference is traditionally with TV, you get a lot less time to shoot it. So you can't necessarily, you get less pre-production, way less post-production, and often less time to shoot. And so unfortunately, it means that there is a lot of creative compromise in that regard.
And are you just with the TV? You're there. You direct, obviously, with the camera and the crew and the cast, etc. Are you then in post production at all, or is that more the producer? And do you have more? But it is way more the producers and the writers. So to put it in perspective, you normally get anywhere from 1 week to 2 weeks an episode as the director in television. I think on The Wilds, I only got 3 days or something for my episode. And then you present your director's cut, and then without any input from you, if the writers or producers don't like something you've done, they will recut it and change it around and do all of that kind of stuff. And then when you see it on television, you as the director are seeing it for the first time. Whereas to put it in perspective, like, I think The Wilds was the last show I did, and I got somewhere between 3 and 5 days. I think it was 3 days for my episode. I just did the finale of season 2. And so, 3 days in post, that was my whole responsibility. I've been in post on the movie that I wrapped in December of last year. I've been on it since January, and I am on it full time still. Yeah. And it's and what are we now? July. So what's that? 6 months after I finished shooting, I'm still on it full time. Yeah. So that's a significant. You can see how much more responsibility the director has when it comes to making a movie. Yeah, of course. Okay, that's a good clarification. Thank you for that.
No worries.
Do you see, I know you're saying that they're a bit of a gift. Do you see yourself making more TV in your future filmmaking career?
Yep, absolutely. Because TV, like job directing, so when you just get, hey, are you interested in doing an episode of this or whatever, it's how I survive. Yeah. It's much more lucrative than movies because it's just much less of a commitment. And yep, absolutely. And I'm all for being a jobbing director. Yep. And there's a couple of ideas I've got of my own that I wouldn't mind developing up and trying to turn into a series. But yeah, I'm just so busy with all the movies at the moment that's a bit tough.
Are there any TV shows that you'd like to have a bit of a guest direction of?
Oh God,
jump into Stranger Things.
I don't know. I don't know if I'd want to get involved in something like Stranger Things or Walking Dead, which is so beloved and been around so long. I mean, yes, I would do it because it would look amazing on the CV. But I get the stuff that really excites me is new stuff. I want to be there for the discoveries. And it's also hard when you're a director who is just coming in to do one episode, and if it's been like a couple of seasons, two or more, you turn up and all the actors know everybody so well, a lot of the crew know everybody really well, and you're literally this stranger who turns up on set and tells everybody what to do. And so that's incredibly intimidating. That's the scary thing about television. And so for me, I would, even though you get all the teething problems with first series, I think I'd still be more attracted to that unless it was something awesome. I mean, if Sopranos was still running, like, who wouldn't want to direct an episode of that?
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so
or Deadwood. I mean, if Deadwood came back for another season, I would fight tooth and nail to try and get on that.
Yeah. Awesome. So your future you're heading is more of your own films and or obviously taking up the TV opportunities. Can we kind of rewind back in your career? When did you first make your first film as a filmmaker?
My first short film, I think I made in 2002 or three, probably three. I think it was 2003. Yeah, end of 2003, I think, was my first one. And made my first movie in 2016. And I made my first television in 2007.
Right. Okay. And so prior to that first short film, had you been writing scripts or stories?
Yeah, I was writing movies. I wasn't really writing. Like I wrote, I think, 3 feature-length scripts before I even tried to write a short film. It was just a medium that I never understood. And I think as a result of that, I never really made a particularly good short film because I didn't love short films like I loved movies. And so I'd go to festivals and I'd watch shorts and I'd oftentimes be underwhelmed, and almost 100% of the time some short film would be lauded over by everybody and I just wouldn't understand it. Like it would be so arty or there'd be something about it. I just don't get this. And I think unfortunately with my shorts, I felt, I think short films were more important back when I was starting than they are now, but I think I felt that it's like, all right, well, I have to make a short film or no one's going to let me make a movie. And I just tried to intimidate the short films that were being made that were being successful for the filmmakers. And I don't think I really put my heart into any of them because it's not a medium that I ever really cared for myself, whereas I've always loved movies, and I think my first movie was way more successful as a movie than any of my shorts were as shorts. Every movie I've made, despite mixed reviews or whatever, has been more successful than any short that I ever made.
Yeah, no, I totally understand where you're coming from there. I've found short form hard to get my head around, because it's such a particular recipe, and as you said, people can say that this is a great short film, and yet the way my brain works, and I think yours is probably a bit similar in terms of the creative filmmaking, you're kind of looking at a longer story, and so, and then now, of course, now with sort of the rise of the streamers, you have that sort of maybe 8-part TV show, which is even bigger story again, So, it's always, I always find it interesting to hear what other people's perspective on that is. What drew you to writing stories or wanting to be a filmmaker to begin with, Ben?
I kind of sucked at everything that I did. Like, I went to an all-boys school that was really sport-driven, and I'm completely uncoordinated and got bullied as a result of that, and so naturally was kind of drawn to the drama crowd. And once I started doing drama, I certainly was never anyone who stood out, but I found my people, and I was much better at drama in comparison to what I was at all of the sports. And so I just kind of thought, right, this is the only thing that I've ever liked enough to want to work hard for. And so, I wrote my first feature-length movie at 15 years old. I don't remember ever wanting to do anything different.
And what is your process for writing these films? Do you start... some ideas, for example, is to start with the finales. Like you've got an idea of how a story will culminate. Do you start there and then work backwards, or do you start with the inciting incident and
that
so on? Start at the end.
Inciting incident. It's always it's always different. Like one script that I wrote that I hope one day will get made because I think it's really good. It's just so dark that everybody's terrified of it. But one that particular movie, I just had an image, and it's not even particularly cool when I think about it, but I just had this picture. It was nighttime, and there were 2 guys dressed in prison uniforms running through the bush, and one of them was soaked in blood. And I just saw that image. I was like, well, who are they? Where are they going? As a storyteller, I was like, all right, I'm engaged by that image I'm seeing. So what next? Well, they clearly just broke out of prison. What's the first thing you're going to need when you get out of prison? A car, And so it was and I built the whole story from that image. And then I was like, well, whose house did they break into? And, what if they break into a house and the guy who's covered in blood actually finds a teenage girl who's just tried to kill herself and ends up saving her? And then you go, well, that's an interesting inciting incident. Someone breaks into a house and ends up finding someone hanging from a ceiling fan and resuscitates them and saves their life. I mean, what a complex relationship you have right there. And so that was sort of where that one came from. And so, yeah, and the thing that I'm writing at the moment is based on a short story, and the short story is just one scene in real time, and that is what I thought, well, this is a terrific inciting incident for a movie. And so, yeah, inciting incident is a good one. But once I have that, then you have to quickly go to the who, because the who is the most important thing. And by that, I mean the protagonist. And so the first thing I do once I've got my little inciting incident, which is usually, the premise of the movie. All right, well, who is this person? And the most... there are no rules, but there's a lot of principles that seem to work over and over again in movies. And one of those principles is that characters need to change. And so I go, right, I've got my inciting incident. Who is my who? So who are they when they begin the film, and who are they when they end the film? And I don't worry about plot points. It's just like, okay, well, maybe my character starts off as somebody who absolutely hates their mother. I know by the end of the movie, she needs to jump into her mother's arms, and so once you work out those characters, then you can start to work out the plot around that, because, it's a quote that I stole, which I don't mind saying, but it's kind of my mantra, and that is, story is the journey for truth, and plot is just the road you take to get there. And so I think that the story is the humanity of what's going on in the movie, and it's the characters, and it's what their relationship with the human condition is, and that's the story, and the plot is what helps them evolve as human beings over the course of the narrative.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we need as an audience, isn't it? We need that journey to be true. Like, the plot points are the plot points, but we need to see that evolution of the character.
Yep, and it can be simple, It's like Jaws is just so perfect. Schneider is a cop who absolutely is terrified of the water, and in the end of the movie, he just ends up in the water. In order for him to beat this thing, he's got to meet him on his own grounds, and or her. A shark that big probably would have been a female, I imagine.
Yeah. I think they try to, in order to have the sequels, they had to say that it was a female line of sharks. That
well, fun fact: female white pointers are significantly bigger than male ones.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I've seen a doco about it in the South Australian Bight, where they went out and they got killer whales that had attacked a great white, but then a great white attacked a killer whale, and it was all females because of the sizing of them. Do you have a film or a filmmaker that then has influenced you over that? Like, it could have been years ago or it could be more recently. I mean, you just mentioned Jaws, but is there a film that stands out from your childhood, or a filmmaker that kind of connects to you?
So many. Yeah. And I think early on, but still today, I'm a massive Star Wars nut. Like, I'm not even going to tell you how many Star Wars figurines I have in my house from the 80s.
Oh, no, please do.
I've got hundreds of them still on their card back, and I'm a Star Wars collector, and I have been my entire life. I just can't help it. And so obviously George Lucas and Star Wars was my first love. I cannot remember being obsessed with anything earlier than I was obsessed with Star Wars. And then I kind of, and it makes sense. I don't think I'm alone when I say this, but obviously Star Wars is such a great adventure story. So I was drawn straight to Indiana Jones. And so that introduced me to the Spielbergs. And so I really liked those and I loved Westerns as a kid as well. So early on, after Spielberg, I kind of started to discover Clint Eastwood as a filmmaker. I just loved him. And then as I learned more about filmmaking, kind of in my formative years, I became obsessed with Terrence Malick. And, of course, Stanley Kubrick, because you have to. And Steven Soderbergh is another one who is really influential on me as well. There's just so many of them. In more recent years, Denis Villeneuve and Steve McQueen. It's always changing and always evolving. Deborah Granick is another one who I just think is fantastic. I just wish she made more films. And, so many of them. But Justin Cazelle, I think, is if I was going to talk about an Australian filmmaker whose movies I watch and wish I'd made, it would be Justin's. I think he's fantastic.
And, well, you've said, so Star Wars, is Star Wars like your favourite science fiction film?
Oh, without a doubt. hands down.
And have you seen anything like recently that you think stands out to you in the science fiction world?
Probably not. You know, it's for me to want to watch science fiction. It's really got to have a thing. You know, I'm sorry, I can't be more clear, but I mean, Ex Machina was awesome. That was a science fiction film that kind of rocked my world. But yeah, I tend to like the smaller ones, you know, because the smaller ones are still about people. You know, Primer is another awesome one. Yeah, I tend to like the smaller ones where it's more about the people dealing with the situation. But yeah, I can't even remember the last new one that I watched. I mean, Arrival, that blew my mind. Yeah. That was my favorite film of the year when that came out. So yeah, I like it, but I don't like just the, you know, repackaging of the same thing we've seen a million times before.
Yeah, it sounds like the thing that tickles you is more of a like the psychological, sociological science in sci-fi. You know, all those ones you've just listed 100%. Off, Arrival. Even though Arrival's aliens, it's actually the fact that it's mind-altering the timeline for her, and then the way the filmmaker delivered that to us as an audience. We were baffled, weren't we? You know, so I think that's what I'm getting from you. Is you're like in that side of the sci-fi.
You're very right. Like I'm only just realizing that myself. You're a good therapist.
All right. Well, look, the thing is, you are championing the filmmaking world because you've made 3 very interesting feature films that the public can go and see, and you've written a whole bunch of other stuff. I did hear you speak at CineFest a couple of years ago, and you did mention something like you'd written about 9 or 10 scripts before Hounds of Love. Yeah. And obviously
Hounds of Love was Hounds of Love was the 11th that I wrote.
Yeah, and that's amazing.
The first that got made.
Yeah, and that's amazing. I think that's such a really great writing technique or tip for young writers to sort of pick up on. So do you have any sort of do you have any other tips, or is that your tip for maybe someone that is starting out in the filmmaking world, or any other advice for someone that is sitting down to, I want to be a script writer, or I'm a filmmaker and I want to write my own scripts? What would be your advice to them?
So hurry up and fail, because no one, this is not something, screenwriting is not something that anybody is born able to do. It's a craft and you have to learn it. And the only way that you learn it is by reading a ton of books, watching a ton of movies, and trying and failing and letting people read your stuff and then, you know, and taking criticism and going off and doing it again. But I think maybe the best piece of advice that I've got is something that a realization, kind of light bulb moment that I had when I was freezing my butt off in Serbia, making Extinction, and my film Hounds of Love was playing at the Tribeca Film Festival, and like pretty much the whole cast went, and a lot of the heads of department went, producers went, and I couldn't go because I was making Extinction, and I did have massive FOMO then, and was really quite upset with it. And then I just thought, hang on a minute, Ben, you didn't become a filmmaker because you want to walk red carpets and bask in your own glory. Yes, that's very nice when that does happen, but you became a filmmaker because you're a storyteller. And right now, what better excuse do you have to not be at a film festival than you're making a movie? And it was then that I realized that I guess there's 2 reasons why anybody gets involved in filmmaking, possibly any form of art whatsoever. And one of those reasons is result and one is process. And the result is obviously walking the red carpet at whatever film festival or winning an award or getting fan mail or anything like that, or getting a big payday. That's a result, and everybody likes that. And you're allowed to like that. But that is such a small part of what it means for anybody, even the most successful people that you've ever met, still have to go and shoot for 18 hours a day in the freezing cold, and just read about the conditions that The Revenant was made in, and that was made with some of the biggest, wealthiest, most successful filmmaking people and actors in the world. And so you have to be in it for the process. You have to love those freezing nights, and you have to love the challenge of how difficult the day is in getting through it. And even when you don't get the result, like if you sit down and you write a screenplay and you send it to producers or directors and gets rejected by everybody, you know, remind yourself of why you started to write it and what you felt when you were having those ideas, staring at a blank and conquering the blank page. Because to write 100 pages of anything is a huge achievement. And so learn to love that process. And if you do, you're just going to be prolific. And eventually the result will come from that, you know, and accept the fact that if you do write that script and no one likes it, well, you are a hell of a lot better writer than you were before you wrote that. And so maybe they'll like your next one, you know, or the one after that, or 11 after that in my case.
Wow, I really like that. I really love that advice, Ben. The process is what it's all about. I totally love that.
Well, I also like you're saying you're, and I'll paraphrase here, but basically there's no point in not releasing something because you want it to be perfect, because for it to be perfect, it has to be released. Right? And then when it fails, be perfect. That's your step towards it, you know.
Yeah, there's an old saying, you know, in the film industry that a movie is never finished, it's abandoned, because you could just always be changing it. Yeah. There's always going to be something you wish was a little bit better and this, that, or the other, you know. And so maybe that's the other thing. If you strive to perfection in filmmaking, it's a feat you're never, ever, ever going to reach. And so if you keep aiming for it, maybe, you know, you'll certainly keep getting better.
Excellent.
Even Spielberg gets bad reviews.
Yeah, that's right. They all do.
And he cries about it on his big mountain of money.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's interesting because when we reached out for you for the film festival, going through your agent, your public profile through your agent is that you're described as a Western Australian filmmaker. So I want to know, what do you think about the West Australian government possibly building a studio? There's been the talk at Fremantle, that's kind of been shelved, and then they're possibly going to build it somewhere else. The money's there. What do you think building a studio in WA is a good thing, or would it be better to put that money into, say, 100 feature films being made, you know, say through the West Coast Visions? We could make 100 West Coast Vision films, or we could build a studio. What do you think about the studio concept?
Hey, look, I think that's a really great question. We could make 100 films, but will any of them generate any income for the government? I don't know. Mm-hmm. You know, like right now, I guarantee you there are not 100 filmable scripts anywhere in Western Australia. Yeah. You know, so I don't know, and I don't know if I'm qualified to talk about it.
Yes, you are. Come on.
If they want to build a studio in Perth, I think that's absolutely fantastic. You know, and I'm all for it. I'm possibly the only director in Perth who's ever even set foot inside a studio, you know. So I think that's great, but I think that it's not a matter of if you build it, they will come. Yeah. There's a lot of other things that we need. Like we need to support the crew in Western Australia, and we've got to understand that Perth is the most isolated capital city in the world. I think it's the furthest city in the world from Los Angeles. And so we've got a smaller population, and presently, if they built a big studio, we don't have the crews, you know? Like we've only got enough people in Perth to effectively make one long-form project at a time, you know? And so we would have to hope that a lot of very qualified technicians from over east or anywhere in the world would see a studio being built in a young city like Perth as an opportunity for them to basically, you know, move to Western Australia and be, you know, the only person in Perth who has a techno crane or something like that, you know. And so I think with the studio, we needed a lot of incentives to encourage highly qualified film technicians to want to come over with it. Because, you know, the other thing that Perth has got, which is so wonderful, is we've got all of the locations. You know, just a couple hours down south, you can be in a forest. We've got the most beautiful beaches in the world. We've got desert. We've got a climate which allows you to shoot pretty much, you know, throughout the whole year. So, I'm excited by it. I think it would be really great, but it's certainly not a one-stop shop to fix all of our problems.
Yeah, they've got to support all the other feeding in, you know, crew, cast, you know, equipment. Everything has to become an ecosystem, doesn't it? For it to work, for sure. And so tell us a bit about your latest project before we wrap up tonight, Ben.
Which one? The one that I'm in post-production for?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, cool. That one is called Where All Light Tends to Go, and it's based on a book by David Joy, who is a fantastic American writer. He's written a whole bunch of books, and he's really worth getting into if you like reading. It's about a dude, an older man living in the Appalachian Mountains, who is kind of the meth kingpin in the hood, and he's grooming his son to take over the family business. And then the son kind of decides that may not be for him. And so he hatches a plan to rip his dad off and run away with the girl of his dreams. And so it's a crime drama, crime thriller. It feels very much like a 90s or 70s movie. Fast cars, guns, very sort of masculine film with a terrific cast. Billy Bob Thornton is the actor who plays the dad, the big meth kingpin, and his the actor who plays his son is Hopper Penn, who is Robin Wright's son and Sean Penn's son, and Robin Wright plays his mother in the movie, which is great. And we've got a wonderful supporting cast of Jackie Earl Haley and Brian Darcy James and Emma Booth, who I've never made a movie without, Harrison Gilbertson, and it really is a wonderful cast. So I hope people respond to it. So please, any listeners out there, keep your ear to the grindstone and check it out if you hear it.
Yeah, for sure. And are you expecting that to have like a cinema release, or is it a streaming? Don't know yet?
Don't know. I do know Universal are releasing the movie internationally, so that's good. Yep. So it will be available. But, I'm not sure if it's I don't know. It'll be up to them and their number crunching people to realise if this is the kind of movie which warrants a cinema release, or if it's better just ending up on a streamer, because it is a small film and it's about, and it's an independent film and it feels like an independent film. It was never meant to be a blockbuster or anything like that, and it won't be a movie for everybody. So, I could say I'd almost be certain that there'll be some theatrical screenings in Western Australia.
Awesome.
Oh, cool.
Look forward to that. We can get along and have a look. I want to give a big thank you for your time today, Ben, coming on. It's been a really great chat. You can really feel the presence of your passion behind film and storytelling, and that definitely comes across. It came across at the festival, and it's lovely to talk to someone that is just so passionate about filmmaking and storytelling. So I really appreciate it. Is there anything else that you'd like to say or like to add or anything?
No, just thank you very much for asking such considerate and thought-out questions.
That's okay.
We try our best.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Thanks, Ben.
See ya.
Take care, guys.
You
Bye.
too. Bye.
And that was benyoung.
What a terrific conversation with such a talented local West Australian filmmaker. And if you're out there and you have a listen, wherever you're listening to Space Brains, make sure you hit us up with a review, maybe a 5-star rating, wherever you get your good podcasts. Also, let us know what you thought about tonight's episode through our socials. So we can find us on Facebook, Instagram and TikTok. And of course, now on YouTube. Just have a look for Space Brains Productions and I'm sure you'll find us. Leave a comment, ask a question, suggest a film that we can have a look at in the future.
And speaking of that, episode 87, what film are we going to do?
We are going to do Salute of the Jugger, or aka The Blood of Heroes.
Yes, in Australia, Salute of the Jugger. In America, The Blood of Heroes.
Starring Rutger Hauer, which we had with Blade Runner a few episodes back.
G'day, Rutger and Vince D'Onofrio from Full Metal Jacket.
Terrific actors.
And nothing else.
Terrific actors, and I'm going to look forward to having a chat to you about this, Surrey.
I look forward to being chatted to about it.
Good. I'm going to chat down.
Bye.
Bye. See ya.